Thanks for joining us on Over My Dead Body, the podcast hosted by Nichola and Carl that aims to bust those myths about all things funerals and answer the questions you never dared ask. So stick in your earbuds, listen, and then send us your questions for the things we still haven't answered for you. Happy listening. Welcome back to Season 3, Episode 1 of Over My Dead Body. Carl, how are you doing?
Wow, it's great to be back, Nichola. Here we go again for the action-packed series. Love it, love it.
We say that like we've not seen each other in the time we've been on there, but we have actually done a few funerals together. But it is good to be back, and we are delighted for Season 3 to be bringing you more of what you've asked for. So more of those real-life conversations, more busting myths, more answering your questions, and one or two bits of inspiration for either planning the conversations with your loved ones or even planning your own funeral, should you wish to. So it sounds exciting, eh?
It's brilliant. Yeah, I can't wait to get stuck into it. Lots going on. Very busy.
So, Carl, in the weeks we've been off air, what has been happening in your world? What have you been up to?
Well, where do we start? I don't know if I've mentioned on this podcast, but I am the Mayor of Richmond.
Are you? Is that not finished yet?
Yeah, it's not finished yet, but it is coming to an end.
Thank God.
Let's get some sad music. Let's get the violins out. Sad times. Yes, it's been a fantastic couple of weeks since we finished the last series. What's going on with the council and the mayoralship and so on and so on. But unfortunately, work has been busy as well. And I say that unfortunately because there has been some rather big funerals that we've had to look after, and we've looked after them together.
We've had a couple of very big services which you often get for younger people, and one in particular where a lovely lady by the name of Kay Jones really challenged us to push our creativity and pack a load into a service, and we are delighted that Kay is going to be one of those guests in the coming weeks and just talk us through the whole story of her and her gorgeous husband Dan's life together, and then what we planned for her funeral. It was an emotional one.
It was emotional. It was action packed, full of. We had singers. We had also the order of service was absolutely phenomenal, and
ginger shots.
We even had we had ginger shots, and we also had a recipe in the order of service that Kay often bakes. So
it's really Dan's favourite. So yeah.
Obviously, that's a little bit about me. What about you? What have you been up to, Nichola? Talk us through your last few weeks.
Well, it's been a bit emotional here in the Reader household.
Yeah.
I think we probably signed off Series 2 with Steve saying that he was going for a little bit of treatment. So Steve's not going to speak on the show, but he was happy for me to talk about what he's been through. So you might remember Steve, producer Steve, his appendix burst in November. He was in hospital, and subsequently scans from that led to him being diagnosed with kidney cancer just the week before Christmas, which was a bit of a shock, to say the least. So, 7 weeks ago now, I think he had his kidney removed. And we found out from that he's actually allergic to fentanyl. He would make a terrible drug addict because all he does is throw up. So I think we're quite safe now knowing that he'll never be a fentanyl addict. But it's been a bit of a rough time. He's recovering well, and we get his results in the next few days as to what that means in terms of have they managed to remove all of the cancer, or does he need a little more treatment?
I think that leads us quite nicely into a little bit of a talking point, Nichola, because for us as funeral directors and celebrants, we're often on one side of our industry as such. Whereas now it's sort of thrown you into a little bit of a dilemma, hasn't it, of eulogies and writing particular eulogies and thinking a little bit more closer to home. I think for myself, and I think I maybe mentioned this on previous episodes, is I'm relatively lucky that I've not had to live through a lot of grief, and I think it's a little bit the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And wasn't somebody, neither myself nor Steve, who had a lot to do with the NHS, hadn't spent a lot of time in hospital, and quite often for you and I, we're dealing with the people that don't come out of hospital. So your brain automatically defaults to, even with something as simple as having his appendix out, well, he's not going to make it through the operation, he's going to get an infection. You hear all of those stories about, I just went in with a toothache and he got sepsis, and you think, is that going to be the story for Steve? So you're automatically terrified because of the things we deal with on a day-to-day basis. And I think the difficult thing for celebrants is we're self-employed, so if we don't work, we don't get paid. So I only had a couple of days off. I didn't miss any services. But every service you're at, you're thinking, is the next eulogy I write going to be Steve's? Is the next service I'm planning going to be Steve's? And it's quite hard to stop your brain from going to that place.
I mean, and I will just point out at this point, we did manage that side of things of you not coming into work. It wasn't like we were dragging you in.
Oh, absolutely.
To do other family services, you know.
Absolutely.
We did have things put into place. But
Massively so.
It's a difficult thing to do, whereas I'm full-time employed and you're self-employed.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. And I should say to every single family that I supported during that time, I was really open and honest about where we were and you know, Steve being in hospital and what we were going through, because I kind of wanted them to have the reassurance that there were 2 or 3 celebrants in place who always had a copy of my script. You as a funeral director can go on Google anytime and pick my script up if I can't make a service. There were so many contingencies in place, and every family was incredible, absolutely incredible in being supportive and kind and helpful, and even going through their own grief, you know, asking the questions. But do you know what, for me it was brilliant seeing you guys turning up, and your bearers were at the crematorium and giving me a big hug. How are you doing? How's Steve doing? Really helps.
I think that's an important one, because we all, as much as we all have, you know, different funeral directors who you work for, we are genuinely all one big family. You know, I've worked for different funeral directors over the years, and I'm still good friends with them. We still work together. We help each other out wherever we can. And I'm sure that's the same in the celebrant world. In fact, I know it is the same.
Absolutely.
And we've always got those fallbacks, and that's one thing that I'm always proud of, is that no matter what's going on in all of our lives, we all pull together to make sure that service remains the same for that family who, you know, in their eyes is that most important, you know, day or minute of their life. And I think, you know, it rings true.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just a big shout out to Karen Lester and to Melanie Dickinson, the 2 celebrants in particular who kind of were there just as my backup every single time. Luckily we didn't need them too much. I think I just asked Karen to stand in on one service, but they were just brilliant. And you know, other funeral directors, so David Knowles, who we had on series 2, I wasn't working on a funeral with him, but he must have heard somehow that Steve was unwell, and he's met Steve a few times and just sent me a text saying, you don't need to tell me anything, but I'm just thinking of you, and I'm, you know, rooting for you guys. And we are like a little family in the funeral industry. We all have our little roles and different bits that we do, but we are like a little family.
We're all in it together, all working together. And as it happens, Steve isn't with us this evening. He's upstairs on the treadmill, which helps us out, because when we do mess things up a little bit, he's not hearing from others having a go.
There's no water pistol tonight.
So we're safe. We're all good.
So hopefully normal service resumed now, which is brilliant. And I know that all of you will send Steve your very best for a speedy recovery now. So that is good. And if ever you want to see his scar, it's fairly impressive. Or his 9 scars that he's now collected from his various surgeries. So
he's not shy.
He will show you his scar anytime. So aside from that, it's been busy with work as well. And we've had some big old challenging services coming through, and lots of family dynamics, and things are changing in the funeral industry as well. So I think we were just going to touch on, there's been a bit of noise about law commission reform of funerals and those sorts of things that people may have heard about and thought, oh my God, what does that mean? What's going on? So what have you picked up in those reports that's interested you?
Well, for me, this whole situation was always on the cards. And when we think back to when we had David Knowles with us, you know, we said, what does the future hold? And it was almost like he had his crystal ball, and this is exactly what he suggested and predicted, is that the regulation in funerals is going to get tighter and tighter. And I think it only works for the best. for all parties, because it safeguards the families, it safeguards funeral directors and celebrants, and ultimately, when you die, you are going to be looked after in the proper way and in a real dignified way which is only right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is all about maintaining dignity and respect, and for yourselves, for the other funeral directors that I work with, I can say with absolute confidence to families when they ask me, will my loved one be looked after? Undoubtedly. Even if you're going to dress somebody's loved one, you'll be chatting to them and saying, I'm just going to move your arm here, we're just going to take you over here and put this shirt on. They're still a person with feelings.
Yes, so what we've been doing as a funeral home is we've been opening up our funeral home doors to members of the care service. In particular, we're looking at expanding this, potentially up to sort of doctor's surgeries and so on, so that the staff there know exactly the route of their resident. And the reason I'm mentioning this is it's because it's all about the care of that person who's died, and they can see what we do and why we do things. The one thing that stood out for me was the point on the ashes, the uncollected ashes, which I'm just going to reference back to, obviously, the lawful route of the uncollected ashes. Now, a lot of companies have certain policies on what to do with ashes, and will hold on to them for a certain point of time. But ultimately, every now and again, there are people that unfortunately get left at funeral homes. And the example that we sort of use is that, let's say I sadly passed away, but there's only my son Jules, and he's too upset to bring me back into care, and then he sadly passes away. Well, obviously not now, but in the future. And at that point, nobody knows that my ashes are still with the funeral director, and they become left on the shelf as such. And I think that's a really important point, is that we need to try and alleviate that so it doesn't happen as much.
And I think when people say, oh yeah, that probably doesn't happen in many occasions, the reality is we're talking about hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of cases of unclaimed ashes across the country, taking up roomfuls and roomfuls of space at funeral directors. And that comes at a price. People ask why funerals are expensive, but there has to be the space to store some of these ashes. It all costs. It isn't about price, but it all costs.
No, it does, yes. And a lot of funeral directors, I know certainly we don't charge as a holding fee to hold people's ashes, because we say, look, we'll give you a bit of time. And ultimately, families haven't even thought about the funeral, never mind what they're going to do with ashes. So we hold on to them as long as they need to. But then it's also on to the funeral directors to follow up on this and say, look,
sure,
just double checking. We understand that Mum or Dad's service happened a few weeks ago, but we still have these ashes here. We need to be moving them on, or we need to do something with them. Either we scatter them at the crematorium, we'll do that for families, or the families come in and do it themselves.
Yeah, and certainly you as funeral directors are not saying, within a month you must know what you're doing with these. There's absolute leeway for, 6, 12 months. It's the ones that have been there for 25, 50 years.
Yeah,
we have no way of tracing a relative anymore.
No, but there are some funeral directors who I know will say, they'll do them within a week. They'll say, you've got to come in and get them within that week. Now, some people say, well, that's really short and it should be a bit longer. But ultimately, that particular funeral director doesn't have any ashes left on this.
Yeah.
There's no unclaimed ashes. They've all gone. They've all had something done with them.
So I think the proposal that the Law Commission is making, so this isn't law yet, but I think a solution that's been suggested is that after an agreed period of time, agreed by the industry, those ashes could be returned to the crematorium where cremation happened and scattered in their memorial gardens, but there would be a really clear process for everybody to follow. So that is not a law.
Yeah, it's not
I think that is the solution that is being proposed.
And I think it's a fair proposal, because ultimately you want that person's ashes to be disposed of respectfully, and they're not just going to be thrown in a rubbish bin or a rubbish dump where potentially they could end up. But it's at a garden of remembrance where, thousands, hundreds of thousands have gone before them. and it just makes it a little bit more dignified, as we've always referred back to.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the other areas within the kind of law commission proposal as well, or suggestions, is around greater clarity and transparency on direct cremations, which you will all know is one of Carl and I's favourite topics. But for me, this is absolutely crucial, and Carl and I have said it so many times. We never want to say that direct cremation is the wrong thing for anyone to do. It will be the right thing for many people. It's just about knowing exactly what you're signing up for. What does it mean in terms of how your loved one will be recovered from the place at which they pass away, where they'll be taken to, how long they'll be resting there, where they will be cremated, will you know what day that happens, will you be given a time, how will the ashes be returned to you. So it's not about it being wrong, it's about absolutely understanding and having better transparency when these TV adverts advertise for a funeral. That's absolutely not what you get with TV advertised cremation.
No, I agree, and it's transparency, but it's also setting the standards as well. So it's the high standards that funeral directors up and down the country operate. And I can speak for many of the funeral directors. All the funeral directors I know operate at such a high standard, whereas sometimes other corners potentially may be getting cut. Again, it's not me, I'm not quoting from anywhere, but it just raises the bar and gives families that confidence to know that what they've been told is happening is actually happening, and the regulation side of things will pull all of that into line.
Absolutely. And so there's lots and lots of other discussions that are ongoing as part of that kind of reform around kind of burial space, because we're running out of burial space in the UK, and what that means, burial depths, to give us kind of, if we can go deeper, to be able to rest more people in graves. So there's an awful lot going on, but for you, Carl, in the industry, you welcome regulation. You think that's something positive? I
do. The more regulation, the better. And I know that when the funeral planning industry or funeral planning side of things all became regulated, there was a lot of companies that didn't survive. Now, for me, as sad as it is that they don't survive, there's a reason why they don't survive, is because they're not up to the standard that we all expect. And obviously government, the NAFD, the CMA, all of these companies and ruling bodies, governing bodies as you like, set standards for a reason. And if they can't be met, then unfortunately, for me personally, I don't see them in the industry. And that's the level we all operate at. And regulation, as David Knowles referred to, is only a good thing. And lots of funeral directors, we alluded to before, welcome this and open the doors and say, look, if you want to come in and have a look around, by all means you can do, and have a look at the standards and how we operate. It's also, with regulation, you have certain governing bodies I mentioned, such as the NAFD or the BIE, so the embalming side of things. Anybody can be an embalmer. They can just set up and say they're an embalmer, as anyone can set up and say they're a funeral director, as anyone can say they're a celebrant. Not so much the Church of England and things, you can't get away with that. But
I thought you could just get like a certificate online.
Get a dog collar and just do what you like. But
just on a weekend.
On a weekend, but certainly and one thing to be mindful of is when you're searching for funeral directors, is have a look at the website and see what they have displayed on there. If they've got the NAFD, symbol on there, the BIE, all of these sort of the rubber stamps, if you like, just give you that confidence to know that that particular funeral director abides to their code of conduct. And the regulation side of things, if they don't have it, then they don't belong with us. And it must be frustrating for you as a celebrant that, when the phone call comes in and says, "Oh, I am now a celebrant. What do I do?" And it's a similar thing. Standards.
You mean that phone call I get on an almost daily basis?
Yes,
from you celebrant.
Yes, and look, don't get me wrong. I'm we've got to have variety, but it doesn't matter. You can have a lot of variety, but if they're all not to a standard, then they're not going to be used.
And that is my point exactly, because I think sometimes when I speak about my concerns over the number of new celebrants in the industry, people think that's from a competitive perspective. and the reality is there are fewer services around to be taken and more celebrants. So yes, it affects us all. But actually, for me, it's rooted in quality. And I think you only become a quality celebrant when you've got a huge number of services under your belt and you start doing the job. And you take it really seriously as a profession with a website, with the disclosure and barring checks that you need to have, with the trade association membership, and with the right insurances in place, with your accounts submitted to HMRC every year. All of those things are really, really important and drive the quality forward, because I don't see it as much now. We don't have as many poor celebrants as perhaps there have been in the past, but the industry has got a bit of a hangover of, oh my God, they got the name wrong, or we couldn't hear what they said, or they just wrote what they wanted to write and didn't listen to us. And there's all of these kind of hang-ups really about what celebrants get wrong. I would like celebrants that are trained to be given the reality about some way. I think it can only drive professional standards and make us all better.
Yeah, 100%.
Is that 100%?
That's 100%. Yeah.
Sorry, Steve.
I love 100%. Sorry, Steve.
So where you might think that Carl and I are being a little bit defensive and whingy, do you know what? We really, really care about the families that we look after and your loved ones. And that's, I think, why we sometimes get a little bit passionate about doing things right, doing things proper. Because I think, from those examples of legacy in Hull, from those examples I hear where celebrants have got people's names wrong, of ministers, it happens as well. That's just not good enough. Our lives deserve better, and we're just really passionate about doing it well.
There used to be a minister locally where we lived. He is no longer with us, unfortunately, but he would never write anything down, and it was a funeral director's nightmare. But he would never write anything down, but he remembered.
He got it
everything.
all. Amazing.
He nailed the service. It was, you could set the running order in the services generally was the same as it was in a church. So you have the same. So obviously you change the hymns and things, but when he delivered the eulogy or what he was going to say, there was nothing written down.
Incredible.
And he was absolutely fantastic.
Incredible.
I mean, I couldn't do it. I don't think as many people who ever could anymore. But fantastic man.
So expect a few changes coming in the funeral industry. I know West Streeting came out last week to say, as a government, they were supporting all of the changes that are being proposed, and just to bring in more regulation and to just make sure those quality standards are in place. So, if Carl and I can help out, if Mr. Streeting would like a little bit of advice, please do give us a shout, and we would be very, very happy to offer our advice, although I'm guessing he might be quite busy over the next few weeks. So moving on from that, I have another question for you. Have you heard the latest news about Nichola Kidman training to become a death doula?
I haven't.
Have you not heard this?
No. Does she live around here?
She doesn't live around here. I believe she lives in Hollywood. So.
Wow.
Oh no, maybe she's back in Australia.
Mm.
So remember we had Katie Costello in Series 2?
Yeah.
And if any of you follow Katie's journey, she's done some incredible work recently, and she travelled to Switzerland to collect the belongings of one of the people that she'd been working with towards the end of their life. So she didn't accompany them as they went to end their life. She went afterwards to collect as their nominated person. And just listening to some of her work and her stories and is absolutely phenomenal.
It's a powerful listen, definitely. Incredible.
But that whole kind of Nichola Kidman now going, do you think she'd make a good death dealer, Carl?
I don't know. I think, yes, I mean, she maybe is playing on a celebrity. I mean, you never know if she's good at the job. But then, how does she start? Will she give you a ring? Or what does she do? Does she give Katie a ring? How does she get her foot in the door?
Well, Nichola, I am ready to take your call anytime you need some advice, although, death dealer isn't my speciality. But it's interesting how you see these kind of celebrity things take off, not so much on the funeral side, but I know when Lorraine Kelly, she held a wedding as a celebrant on Good Morning TV, and then suddenly everybody was going to be a wedding celebrant. So we have yet to have a celebrity funeral director, I believe.
Not that I'm aware of, and there may be some. Some funeral directors believe they are celebrities. However, that isn't the case.
Anyone in particular, Carl?
No one comes to mind.
Don't think of anyone in particular. Oh, it's good to be back, isn't it?
Great to be back. Love it.
So we've kind of talked about regulation. We've talked about what's been going on in our world. Carl, anything that's been making you rant or smile in particular over the last few weeks?
Well, I'm in a quite happy-go-lucky sort of chap anyway. But I mean, the last few weeks has been very difficult for funerals. There's been some very big funerals, some very emotional funerals, and ultimately it does take it out of you. I don't care what anybody says; it does have an effect. But the feedback that you get, not just from the families, but also the people who are attending, as as the official mourners as such. It's always nice just to stand at the end of the service and just that little nod. I'm not expecting everybody to come up and say, "Great job, mate, that's really good." It's just that little nod. It's usually it is. But just that little nod of appreciation. It just makes it all worthwhile. If you're having a bad day, you still have to put on your funeral director head and you have to deliver that service. But at the end of the day, it's ultimately what the families want and expect, to have that perfect service as such. So it's nice to always get a bit of feedback from families. It is.
And you know what? A funny story about how you have to put on your face and just go back to work. So yesterday, I did a service in the morning at Reed Road Crematorium, cemetery, just around the corner. So I've done that. Come back home to have a sandwich for lunch, and I'm heading out to Darlington Crematorium for an afternoon service. So I was upstairs just touching up my makeup, came downstairs, went flying because the heel broke on my boot.
Christ.
I was already running a little bit late. I'm collapsed in a heap at the bottom of the stairs. My shoulder hurt, my elbows are bleeding, I've ripped my trousers. I'm screaming, Steve's going, "You've got a funeral to get to." And I'm like, "I know, but I look like a mess and everything's hurting." He's like, "Well, I've just had a kidney out, so upstairs, do your makeup, get in that car and off you go." And it's so true that whatever happens, your priority is always the families and just whatever's going on in your world, and you get through that service. And thank you to the family yesterday afternoon. Hopefully you didn't notice I was kind of slightly blooded and crying. But at the end of it, when they just say, "I don't know what that was just what Dad would have wanted," it just makes it all so worthwhile.
I tell you what else is also new in my world. I've just bought myself, and I'm just going to show you this now, Nichola. I have bought myself a bowler hat.
Why?
Well, I don't really know why, but I saw it online. And I thought, I'm having that. And I think for particular sort of events that we go to, obviously funeral directors wear the top hat. Winston Churchill wore one. There's many other famous figures that wore them. But
are you likening yourself to Winston Churchill?
No, let's put that straight in. Definitely not. But it was just one of those panic buy. Well, not a panic buy. It was an impulse buy. That's it. Yes. My wife's not really keen on it. She won't mind me saying that because she's not.
I'm Team Sherry on it.
And you're Team Sherry. Well, I quite like it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, tell you what, guys. We will put that photograph on one of our socials with a poll. You can either go yes, no. Do we want to see Carl at funeral? And you look very distinguished.
Yes. Some said that unfortunately. I'm a little old before my time. That's what it is.
You've only just realised
you're getting old before your time. I think, crikey, yeah, maybe it's right.
Well, go raving this weekend, and hopefully that'll sort that out.
That surprised you, didn't it?
It did. So I feel like we're getting slightly off topic, which makes me think we've probably come to the end of our musings for Series 3, Episode 1. It is great to be back, but we just wanted to ease in gently to the new series to let you know what we've been up to, what's been going on in our world, and to let you know what's coming up in future episodes.
What I would like to say is that over these last couple of series is that we have been inundated with questions from everybody. I'd just like to say keep them coming in because they are fantastic, and it gives us that opportunity to give you that voice to be heard and for us to answer the questions that sometimes that you may think are irrelevant, but it's worth asking.
Do you know, it's such a good point because the purpose of these podcasts is not just for you and I to blether on with a can in hand on a Tuesday night. It is actually to try and answer the questions that you guys want to know more about. So exactly as Carl said, we have, I think, over 2,000 followers on Facebook now. So please do get in touch with us. Whatever we haven't answered, if you've missed a question, we can answer it again. So please just keep those coming in and we will get through as many of them as we can. So anything else from you, Carl, before we finish up for today?
No, thank you. It's been a privilege to be back here again.
Oh, bless you. Likewise. It was great to be back. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back again next week with another episode. And like we say, if you do want any myths busting, then let us know what they are. Have a great week, guys, and we'll speak to you again soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for listening, and we really hope you enjoyed and were inspired by this week's episode. Remember that you can get in touch with us anytime to ask a question, offer to be a guest, or to request that we bust a particular myth. You can get in touch via any of our social accounts over My Dead Poddy on Facebook, Insta, or TikTok. Or you can drop us an email at overmydeadpoddy@gmail.com. Just a reminder that whilst all of us work in the funeral industry, none of us are fully qualified grief counsellors. And therefore, if you've been affected by any of the issues that we've discussed today, we highly recommend that you seek out professional or medical support to help you with those conversations. Should you need any support, please do get in touch and we can hopefully signpost you in the right direction, but we can't offer those services ourselves. Thanks for listening, and we can't wait to bring you the next episode.